They always tell you there's a catch, a compromise, an asterisk. Sprite Zero Sugar? It's different. It's the lemon lime flavored refreshment you want with zero sugar. This is Sprite Zero Sugar. Obey your thirst.
5 years ago, I was paying $65 a month for my subscriptions. Today, those same subscriptions cost $111, and I don't even use half of them anymore. That's why now I use Rocket Money to manage my subscriptions for me. The app gives you a list of all of your subscriptions and reminds you of upcoming payments, so you're not hit with any surprise charges. On top of that, it also sends you alerts when subscription prices go up, so you always know the price you're paying. If you decide you no longer want a subscription, you can cancel it right from the app. No customer service needed. And the best part is, Rocket Money even reaches out and tries to get you refunded for some of the money you lost. On average, people that cancel their subscriptions with Rocket Money save $378 a year. And overall, Rocket Money has saved its members $880 million in canceled subscriptions. Stop wasting money on things you don't use. Go to rocketmoney.com/cancel to get started. That's rocketmoney.com/cancel. rocketmoney.com/cancel. Let's do the 60-second savings challenge. Step 1, download Rocket Money. Step 2, link your accounts and see every subscription you're paying for. Tap one you don't use and cancel it. That's money back every month. Step 3, create a financial goal. $50 every paycheck, or let the app automatically move small amounts of cash when you can afford it. In a week, you'll forget you set it up. In a month, you'll see real dollars piling up. In a year, you'll be shocked at how much money you've saved. Bonus challenge, upload an internet or phone bill and let Rocket Money try to lower it. You only pay if they find you savings. On average, Rocket Money members can save up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. Users love the app with over 186,000 five-star ratings. Make saving money the resolution you actually keep. Start the 60-second savings challenge at rocketmoney.com/cancel. That's rocketmoney.com/cancel. rocketmoney.com/cancel.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Someone's looking even more chipper than usual today, Kieran. Did somebody win money on the football yesterday?
No. Might have done. It's called it's not a bet, Kevin. It's an emotional hedge.
Yes, so you've said that before. It's betting against your football team, Kieran. That's what it is. But I only wish people had heard you count me in there, Kieran, because they would have realised what an emotionally generous man you are by counting me in by going 3-2-1. Brighton 0. That's very funny. Well done. I feel very sorry for broadcasters, Kieran, all of whom, as we know, are Brighton fans to a man and woman. And whatever else they identify as. The Sky Sport, I thought the Sky Sports team were going to have a break to change into black at the end of that game. They were so upset. They were genuinely so upset. It ruined their narrative as well, the Talk Sport, Sky Sport narrative, which Palace are in a terrible... Palace dragged into the relegation scrap. And now somehow we're 2 points above you, and we still are, and you're not, apparently. They were trying to reassure each other afterwards. Just sort of say, Brighton has still got a big buffer. Palace are getting dragged. We're above Brighton. And also,
there's a lot of very distressed Labra poodles in Sussex after yesterday. I can assure you.
Well, I tell you what, if the price of quinoa goes up today, Kieran, it's going to be a sad day for your part of it. Also, I mean, match of the day. I haven't been able to watch match of the day for a long time, but last night. What wonderful end-to-end football, fantastic goals, superb saves, red cards, controversy, and then our game came on.
Yes.
Poor sods in the Match of the Day editorial office must be going, we're legally obliged to show at least 6 minutes, which they have to. I keep explaining that to people about the contract law with the BBC. They're obliged to show 6 minutes at least of the second game, and they're finding 6 minutes. But yeah,
it was tough.
It was tough, but I think the morally correct decision in the end all round. It's Questions Day, Kieran, and we need to. We're recording on Monday afternoon because we're getting ready for our club members Q&A on Monday evening. So I'm I'm keeping some of my Brighton powder dry.
I'm getting my tin hat reinforced.
It's fine. It's just I did tell you at the time, the Macclesfield weekend. I did tell you in the words of the immortal Martin Lamar, I can forgive, but I can't forget or forgive. They're all noted down there. Before we get into questions, Dave, Kieran, one massive story, but it already seems like a long time ago, basically, and it's the Leicester City situation, and there are quite a few people asking us to clarify this because they've listened to us in the past and they thought that thanks to Nick DeMarco and thanks to Leicester City no longer being in the Premier League, this wouldn't arise. So it means they haven't listened to us carefully enough because this is it's an interesting situation, which I understand could have been worse for Leicester City.
Yes, Leicester City were charged in, I think it was May 2025 by the Premier League for a breach of the PSR rules for the season in which Leicester City were in the Championship. Now, the reason for this is both the Premier League and the EFL changed their constitutions in 2025 to effectively allow reciprocity, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Which meant that a misdemeanor in one of the organisation's competitions could effectively be followed up by the other institution. So this was on the back of Leicester submitting their accounts. And I think in hindsight, Leicester might have wished they'd submitted them earlier. I think there was a scuffle as to when the appropriate date. If they'd submitted them by the 31st of December, and in my view, if they'd handed themselves in, because I'm not being harsh here, Leicester were effectively relegated by January, February of last season. Yeah, they were needing snookers very, very on. They had a very poor season, but they wanted, they clearly made the decision that they wanted to maximise their chances of survival in the Premier League. If they'd handed themselves in, reported themselves as Birmingham City did to the EFL a few seasons ago, they would have had a sort of a good behaviour reduction. And they could have taken a hit in the Premier League last season, and they would have finished perhaps 19th, or they might have finished one place below where they actually finished. But hey, they were relegated. So it cost them £3.5 million in prize money. But they didn't go down that route. They felt that they had a defence which might work. So the hearing was announced in May. It didn't take place until November. And then we've had the verdict now. So the verdict was that Leicester City were given a 7-point deduction, and then that was mitigated for cooperation down to 6. The Premier League wanted a 12-point deduction, plus potentially additional points added on for what the Premier League refers to as aggravating factors, i.e. what they perceive to be non-cooperation from Leicester, but that was rejected. Certainly Leicester from I can only describe as the secret fox, because as you know, we do have contacts now, quite a few clubs. They said they feared that it could have been 15, 18, 20 points could have been the verdicts. So I suspect they're reasonably happy with a 6-point deduction. Certainly, sort of reading the tea leaves from the various posts I've seen from Leicester fans, it was, we spent too much money, and Leicester were deemed to have overspent by 20 million. And perhaps we can discuss why they'd overspent so much a little bit in a wee while. Leicester fans seem to think, well, it could have been far worse. So that's where we are. Leicester's main objections to the charges was that they felt that the EFL and the Premier League are independent organisations, so therefore the Premier League shouldn't have been able to charge based on the EFL constitution. And also they felt that it was a retrospective punishment given that the 3 seasons that were applied were up to the 2024. Nick DeMarco successfully managed to ensure that they didn't get deducted points for the 3 seasons to the 30th of June 2023. But we'd said at the time, they're sharpening their knives. And I always felt that the Premier League were potentially going to charge, and we'll have a discussion about what's the EFL's reaction a little bit later. So that's where we are. Do Leicester City have grounds for appeal? We're pub lawyers, and we're proud pub lawyers, Kevin. It has to be said. I think the grounds for appeal could be along the lines of what form part of Leicester's defence. I've read all of the document. Is that they feel that a retrospective punishment is not appropriate, and they also feel that you can't have one organisation applying another organisation's rules. So that's where we are. That has put Leicester into a much trickier position as far as their standing in the Championship is concerned. And it is 10 years this season since Leicester City were deserved Premier League champions. And it does show football can be a very fickle mistress in terms of success.
The secret fox sounds a little bit Roald Dahl to me. I'm not sure that's my favourite sounding secret one so far. The secret fox. A couple of things off the back of that, Kieran. I know there's probably more you want to add. Firstly, this is because a lot of people have said to me, "Hang on a second, you've been telling us Nick DeMarco's really clever and argued they were neither in the Premier League nor a." This is a separate case. Yeah, this is different.
Yes.
And
yes,
secondly, sorry,
that was in respect of 2023, and this was a charge up for the 3 years ended 2024.
And when Leicester argue, which I can understand, even as you say, as a junior pub lawyer, that a retrospective is not appropriate and that this is a different organisation, are they implying that were they back in the Premier League, they would happily take the punishment, but they just don't think it's right that the EFL should be able to punish them? But it is right, because we know that the EFL and the Premier League, as you said, now have a reciprocal agreement. So everyone knows that you may not like the way the playing field has been levelled, but you know it has been levelled.
Yes, and I think Leicester don't have an issue with that per se, but the Premier League and the EFL both changed their constitutions in 2025. Now, Leicester said, "You're charging us for what happened in 2024." If we'd have known that the rules were going to change in 2025, who knows? We might have behaved in a different manner, and that could form part of defence. When I've been through the Commission's summary, and it's 100 pages. So it's a big weighty tome. That seemed to be quite significantly rejected, but we'll have to wait and see. And you bring up the subject of the EFL. These charges have come from the Premier League. Now, they apply for the 3 years ended the 30th of June 2024. Leicester have an obligation to submit their accounts to the EFL by the 31st of December 2025. So what is the EFL going to do? Could the EFL now charge Leicester because they feel that Leicester's gone over the allowed limit for the 3 years to June 25? We will have to wait and see. I've been through the EFL handbook in far too much detail for a man of my years should be spending his time. And I think there are causes from concern, because what Leicester did in one of the years is that instead of having a set of accounts which lasted 12 months, and they used to prepare their accounts to the 31st of May, they prepared their accounts for 13 months in 1 year, because that allowed them to sell some players in June and keep within the limit. The EFL handbook, if I'm interpreting it correct, and again, I cannot stress enough, we are pub lawyers. My interpretation of it is that the EFL could charge them for a 37-month period, and that could have quite a significant negative impact on Leicester's finances. So they are not out of the woods yet. And again, we have mentioned this on the show before. My big fear for Leicester is that they end up with two sets of charges in a single season. Would a commission, if Leicester are found guilty, take double jeopardy into consideration? We have to wait and see. But on the basis of what we saw at Everton, I think that could be the case. So that it's not a great situation for Leicester. Yeah, they will be considering their options at present. They will be taking legal counsel as to whether appeal the Premier League charge. But could there be a further EFL charge? We have to wait. And they could have had a fantastic set of accounts for 2025. I genuinely don't know.
Yeah. As a junior pub lawyer, Kieran, I always advise my clients to go for the Steve Parish email defence, which in the actual case of Steve Parish rebounded terribly. That's really shouldn't have taken my advice on that at all. I think you've answered the second part of this question as well, Kieran, but several people have said that they sensed some reluctance on the EFL's part to act as the heavy for the Premier League in this situation, and that the worry was that the EFL had their own charges up their sleeves. Do you get any sense that the EFL are unhappy at punishing one of their clubs for something that happened in the Premier League?
No, not necessarily, because, again, I read the Commission's verdict, and if you go to the conclusions at the end, it said this was a 6-point deduction allocated by the Premier League, in effect, which it recommends that the EFL apply. So it can't force the EFL to apply it. And then it said, should the EFL decide not to apply the point deduction, there is a fine of, I think it was around about £9.6 million, which would be a substitute for a points deduction. Now, the ruling came out, and within an hour or two, the EFL says, we've read the ruling, and I suspect they will have been given the ruling 24 hours before it was publicly announced.
Yeah.
We've read the ruling, and we have decided to apply the recommended points deduction. So I think the EFL are happy, because if they weren't happy with that, why change their constitution in the first place to allow this effectively transference of points deductions between the two bodies?
And I suppose finally, to end this, Kieran, the big issue from the Premier League and the EFL, like you've discussed, Leicester City changing accounting dates and adding an extra month here and doing this and doing that. The rules don't make any allowance for whether these things are done just as effective accounting methods, or whether they're done deliberately to obfuscate, or whether there's a bit of ducking and diving going on.
No. All that you can do is review the evidence in front of you. Now, this is where the mitigating and the aggravating points deductions arise. The Commission was happy, effectively, with Leicester's approach, because otherwise it would have given further points deductions. And the fact that it reduced the point deduction from 7 to 6, that was on the basis that Leicester's losses, from a PSR point of view, went from 2023, when they were around about 70 million, to a PSR profit in 2024. They said, right, the direction of travel is right. So clearly you're trying to do the right thing. In my opinion, and I don't get to see players' contracts, so I don't know the inners, but when I saw Leicester's wage bill in 2023, which was the season they were relegated, it was horrendous. It was over £200 million. Now, I was surprised. Normally contracts are highly incentivised. I've not seen any from Brighton or Palace, and I don't claim to be. There will normally be significant bonuses paid out if the clubs avoid relegation, because that is your first objective. From what I can make out, Leicester didn't do that. And when you compare Leicester's wage bill in the season they were promoted back to the Premier League, it was very noticeable that they were far higher than that of Southampton, who went down and bounced back straight back up, and Leeds United, who went down but only got as far as the playoffs. So, again, that suggests to me that if there were relegation clauses, they could have been far higher, but Leicester clearly didn't go down that route, so they have to take some responsibility for that.
Yeah, I don't know what Brighton's wage bill either is, Kieran, but as of 4 o'clock yesterday, I would suggest slightly too high.
Well, based on the comments on the fan forum, you might find you are not alone in that perspective.
Boy, I don't know why they're picking on Ruto. They seem to be picking on him more than anybody else. But never mind. You know what football fans are like. You can't
got a scapegoat.
Yeah, as my mum used to say, you can't lead nor drive them, and she would say that in whatever the situation was or the circumstances. That's one of the things she would say. And everyone would nod and go, "Yes, very, very wise woman."
Very profound.
Very profound. Yeah. You don't disagree with Irish mothers, Kieran, do you? We know that from.
Oh, good grief! No, the threat of the rosary bead and the wooden spoon. Those were the one held in each hand. She'd be shouting and shrieking. Me and my sister be cowering in the corner.
It's like living in The Exorcist half the time, isn't it?
Yes.
Josh Stedman has our first question, Kieran. We got some cracking questions today, and we got one in particular about administration, which I'm looking forward to getting your answer to, because it's, as you know, I love a question that starts with, you may think this is a daft question. Our first question comes from Josh Stedman. And Josh Stedman says, recently most sports have had some sort of all-access documentaries, and in the past, as we've seen, Man City, Tottenham, Arsenal have featured on All or Nothing. More recently, we've seen the Tour de France version, the Six Nations. There's even been a bull riding version. That one, it's only so much can happen in bull riding. I imagine Kieran and me, either on or off. In the All or Nothing version of bull riding is on or off. That's all it's called. I was wondering if those clubs receive much money for these, or if the exposure and awareness of their brand is seen as payment in kind.
Right, Josh. My understanding is that the going rate for one of these series, in terms of the fee given to the club, is between £8 to £10 million. Now, that will be the fee increases the greater the independence the show producers are given in terms of access all areas. So, if the club is going to say, we want to see all the screenings first, and we're going to be involved in a fairly aggressive editing policy, then the chances are you're not going to get as much money. If you look at the Spurs one, I think Spurs got a higher fee than Manchester City because it was quite brutal. At times, some of the things that you saw Mourinho say, and he is great. He's great theatre. Now, I'm not saying Pep isn't, by the way. I think Pep is a very intriguing guy. You only got to look at his comments yesterday post match, and I think the good thing about going to the Brighton Palace match yesterday was that I left on 90 minutes, which meant that the train station was empty because most people had scarpered well before then, and I got back to see the second half of City versus Liverpool, which put a somewhat contrast to, as you were saying earlier, what a 30 minutes of football to finish with. So it is linked to what the producers feel would be the size of the brand, and the level of exposure, the level of access that they get. From the club's point of view, you might think that for a club such as Manchester City and Spurs, £8 to £10 million is just over 1% of their total revenue. Is it worth that 1% gain if the secret sauce, if the inner workings of the club are going to be revealed? And here the clubs have to make a value-based decision. And there is certainly, when you talk to people in marketing, Spurs were absolutely delighted with the level of exposure they got to the show. And remember, Spurs have got a huge following in Southeast Asia, Korea, South Korea as well. And that went down. And we forget that Netflix and Amazon Prime are global products. They're global broadcasters. So, but they were both very happy. So that is something that is factored into it. I understand that Manchester United are they're having a sort of it could be similar, but things aren't they planning it to do sort of a bit like The Crown,
Yeah.
where they're going to have somebody playing the part of Alex Ferguson and Roy Keane and so on. So that's I think that'll be a fictional one, and I suspect the club will therefore effectively just get a licensing fee for the use of the club name, and perhaps the opportunity to have some of the show filmed on the appropriate premises. So that's where we stand. And yes, they get the best of both worlds, Josh. They get branding, they get exposure, and they get a fee. It's not going to move the dial, but £8 to £10 million. That's a couple of players' wages.
Pep Guardiola was very entertaining afterwards, but even more entertaining was Joe Hart on Matchday 2 taking umbrage at Pep's goalkeeper impression. He didn't like it. He really didn't like it. It's basically a lot of stay out of our lane chat going on.
You didn't start a business just to keep the lights on. You're here to sell more today than yesterday. You're here to win. Lucky for you, Shopify built the best converting checkout on the planet. Like the just one tapping, ridiculously fast acting, sky-high sales stacking, champion of checkouts. That's the good stuff right there. So if your business is in it to win it, win with Shopify. Start your free trial today at shopify.com/win.
Want to see your brand on TV? Roku Ads Manager makes it easy to launch targeted ad campaigns in minutes, track results in real time, and drive on-screen purchases with just a click of the Roku remote. Get a $500 match on your first $500 spent with code ROKU500 at ads.roku.com. That's code ROKU 500 at ads.roku.com. Terms apply.
We know, Kieran, that top footballers, the likes of Harry Kane, etc., will earn a lot of money from image rights. Can a football club have image rights in the same way? Are image rights for a club managed in a similar fashion? Or
absolutely. I mean, every single commercial sponsor that a football club has is paying a club for the right to use its badge. So that is the image which is selling, and therefore, as far as Snapdragon are concerned, they're paying £75 million a year to have their logo next to the Manchester United badge on the front of the shirt. So all of these sponsorship arrangements are based on the brand value of the club, and Manchester United is a huge brand, and Manchester City and Spurs, who have just mentioned that equally they are able to command this level of figure because they have global appeal.
Barry Davis has our next question, a name that resonates wonderfully with people of our generation. And Barry says, do any clubs advertise the sky-facing top of their stadium roofs? And what sort of income does it generate? I believe Brentford was a possible target as it's on the Heathrow flight path. I think they had KLM painted on the roof of their old stadium for quite some time, didn't they?
That's right. Yes, clubs are willing to utilise any element of their facilities to generate. I don't think the sums are particularly huge. I know Walsall, if you've ever driven up the M6, or more likely, if you've ever sort of meandered slowly up and down the M6, because at that part it is pretty grim for any M6 aficionado will confirm. Walsall have sort of advertising sheets on the outside of the stadium, which are geared towards people who are going past the ground, because it is a viewpoint. So yes, they do, Barry. As for the numbers are pretty small, because there's not that many people who actually are looking down necessarily from the aircraft, and the chances of somebody saying, "Oh, look, we're going above a rooftop which says KLM. Let's go and change flight for our next part of the journey is likely to be relatively small.
Yeah, I like the idea of the M6 having the aficionados, Kieran. Only you would come up with the roads having the aficionados. Now, Liam Innes has our daft question, Kieran. And Liam
It's
starts.
not. Oh, it's a cracking question.
I think it's a cracking. I quite agree, but I slightly take exception with the opening sentence here because Liam Innes says, "I may be about to ask a question that will send shivers down Kieran's spine." Now, I'm not really at home to any mention of shivers down anyone's spine at the moment, to be perfectly honest. But as this question was almost certainly sent in about a year ago, I'm not going to take it personally. But Liam Innes says, this is a question that will send shivers down your spine, Kieran, as it will try to spin financial mismanagement in a positive light. But it's probably, says Liam, hopefully, as daft a question as has ever been for you both. But here's the question. Has there ever been an administration that you actually quite enjoyed or respected? For example, as a Livingston fan, if it wasn't for how horrendous financial mismanagement in the early 2000s, we would never have been promoted to the Scottish Premiership, ultimately finishing third in our first season, playing in Europe and winning a major trophy. We've ultimately turned out okay-ish after 2 administrations and recently enjoyed a more modest rise up the leagues, which was equally as good. But we also got to see players like Barcelona legend Guillermo Amor pitch up in West Lothian for 3 games and never get seen again. And he says that was actually a bit of a laugh in 2003. Now, I can't answer the financial element of this question, Kieran, but I think most Palace fans will tell you that there's an odd degree of siege mentality, affection, happy memory, not happy memory, but the times when we were in administration were times of great solidarity amongst the Palace fans. I'm sure fans of other clubs will say the same thing. I'm sure Brighton fans will say the same thing about when they're having to traipse across the country to Gillingham. In a way, you kind of have to develop a sense of humour about it to get through it. But when you are through it, it's something that unifies fans like no other thing. Because as we're seeing with Sheffield Wednesday fans, and also players who turned out for a club in that situation, who probably wouldn't be remembered at all, or barely, but because they turned out for us in those administrative, Barry Bannon at Sheffield Wednesday will be a hero forever. Because of the way he conducted himself and the way he played. And we've got players at Palace similar. I'm sure Brighton have similar players as well. So I don't think it's as bad a question as Liam, or daft a question as Liam thinks. But, I mean, economically, can it be, will there be Sheffield Wednesday fans listening to this taking great hope and thinking, well, yeah, look what happened to Livingston. Clubs can come out of these things and trampoline further up even than before.
Well, I was actually going to mention Crystal Palace. Now, I don't enjoy it, and I don't respect any club going into administration because people lose their jobs, creditors don't get paid, the taxpayer gets stiffed. So let's always remember this. Would you have taken 15 years ago, playing in Europe, becoming an FA Cup champions, and 12 years in the Premier League following administration? I suspect you would. Yeah. So well, that is.
I have to say there are still a couple of Palace fans on WhatsApp groups who think it's not enough, Kieran, basically. But yes, any sensible Palace fan would have bitten your hand off for any of that.
So if it replaces a malfunctioning management, or in the case of Sheffield Wednesday, an incompetent management, then I think it is. It does give hope. It certainly galvanises the fan base, and you've got to give huge credit to those Sheffield Wednesday fans. The club's still on negative points.
Yeah.
They've not scored a goal for 8 games, and they're still turning up.
And
that's testament to them. I think it's testament to football fan culture in this country, which we're both very proud to be part of in our own way. We follow our. Let's face it, for the vast majority of our lives, it's following the club through thin and thin. And that makes the good moments even that much better. So, I mean, those were the 2 that I was going to mention. I was also going to potentially mention Portsmouth, because Portsmouth went through such a series of poor owners that eventually it did involve the fans saying enough is enough. and we are going to step in, and they deserve huge credit for that. But in the main, it's the non-footballing elements that make me feel really uncomfortable, and I can never take any pleasure whatsoever from a football club, because those others, it's a horrible word, stakeholders, those other people who are connected to the club are the ones who suffer. Clubs do have this incredible resilience in this country to not follow what we've seen in rugby union, to not follow what we've necessarily seen in other countries, to have only lost Macclesfield Town, replaced by Macclesfield, and Bury replaced by the new Bury, is just a sign that I think fans will always fight, because you can't take away that history, heritage, and identity that the football club gives to you.
Well done for crowbarring Macclesfield in there, Kieran. It
was Macclesfield Town that was destroyed. You didn't lose to Macclesfield Town, did you?
No, but you mentioned Macclesfield as well, so you mentioned them both. So okay. That's good work. Yeah. And to think, just yesterday I was standing your corner on TalkSport. I noticed TalkSport had us on separately yesterday rather than together, in case we couldn't be in this, in case we couldn't be in the same room with the. Now, I happened to mention to Max, as Max Rushton asked you a cheeky question about Chelsea, Brighton selling their midfield stars to Chelsea, and who were the next players that you were going to be selling to Chelsea. And I said to Max, you haven't been married to Kieran long enough to know that he may have sounded cheerful enough, but I could hear his buttocks tensing when you asked that question. I could hear his upper lip curling when you asked him that question. I was shocked to hear Kieran listen to you that you've been a terrible victim of VAR over this season. You sounded like Arne Slot there. There's a serious question I would like to ask you. I mean, first of all, if I was a Sheffield Wednesday fan, the only thing I would be holding hope for is that we did end up minus points. If it's going to be a disastrous season, it might as well be a proper disastrous season. But yeah. I think the reason why Liam assumes it's a daft question is because it's not always the bounce back from administration. It isn't always a place in Europe or Portsmouth having the time of their lives. Is it a situation, Kieran, that for the most part, if a club's in administration, they're far less likely to be bought by... I'm trying to find a way of saying this that doesn't imply that everyone who buys a club out of administration is looking for a cheap bargain. But it just seems to me that the Wrexham situation would be far less likely to have happened if they were in administration. So administration seems to look for the quickest, most urgent way out of administration, which means you don't always get necessarily the long-term best owners, if you see what I mean.
That's right. I mean, to be fair to the football authorities, both the EFL and the Premier League, the downside of having what we refer to as a pre-pack administration, where you go into administration for half an hour, the former owner buys the club back without any of its debts. I won't name the individuals involved there. Google it, kids. Google it. And that was pretty reprehensible in my view. And certainly there are bottom feeders who will try to take advantage of clubs under those circumstances. And Chris Kirchner tried that with Derby County. Fortunately, and again, the EFL deserve credit, and also the likes of Matt Slater, who were willing to go into the deep waters and to call out these people for what they were, as much as they could within the legal constraints that journalism has, deserve a huge amount of credit. But it's very varied. Derby County have got a great new owner. As much as it pains me to say, Crystal Palace have got a great owner in Steve Parish in terms of what he has brought to the club. Again, looking at ones which have worked spectacularly, Leicester City. Yeah, they were in administration.
Yeah, that's
2 or 3 years, and then boom. And I know that theirs has been very cyclical. But would they have won the Premier League had it not been for going for administration in the first place? I think it's a fair chance that they were bought by Amanda Ritchie, who sold to someone and so on. and that led to the success that they had.
Excuse me, my penultimate question, Kieran. Sorry, our penultimate question. Hark at me acting like I host this blinking thing. And well done to TalkSport for getting our name right yesterday. For the last few weeks, they kept calling us The Price Is Football, and you just think, I can't be asked phoning up. You end up you phone up TalkSport to say no, it's The Price of Football. You end up getting put through to Jim White and Simon Jordan. Which is not a risk. Not a risk I'm prepared to take. Sean Chapman has our penultimate question, and it's about something that this is a name we probably mentioned on every pod for our first year of existence, but have very rarely done so since, and that's Bosman. And Sean Chapman says, my question is regarding Bosman transfers. It's been 30 years, and I'm wondering why they aren't more common. They seem to happen more and more, but I don't know why it's not yet the rule at this point, given the incentive for a player like any worker to maximise their earnings and also have greater choice, assuming the net cost of the buying club is actually lower without any transfer fee. My only theory is natural risk aversion and a belief they may not be able to match an offer, say with 2 years left on a deal, than at expiry, even with more bidders. I'm also interested in this, says Sean, as it contrasts with American sports, where free agency is considered a big milestone for any player to reach for their career financially and sporting-wise. It is, like many things in football, Kieran, when it first happened, this was going to be the demise of the game. This was going to be the end of the game. This was going to be where players ruled football forever, and it's not quite worked out like that. But and also there are still fans of a certain age who assume every contract deal has got something to do with Bosman when it very rarely has.
You're absolutely right there. I mean, we certainly do see some very significant Bosman deals go through. Kylian Mbappe, I think, is the most significant one. Ibrahimovic had a habit of signing relatively short contracts and monetizing that by being prepared to move from club to club. In order for that to be the case, you have to be confident enough in your own ability that there's always going to be someone willing to A, to buy you, and B, to match your current salary. Football, as many professionals will be finding out in 3 or 4 months' time, is a really tough industry, and the number of players who will be out of contract at the 30th of June is scary. And they, in theory, are all available on Bosmans, but they have a much more pressing issue. They've got families, they've got bills to pay. They will be in search of contracts rather than clubs being in search of them. So, from a player's point of view, getting the security of a long-term contract can be beneficial, and therefore many of them are prepared to go along with that. And we've seen that at Chelsea in particular. The introduction of this scheme of signing players on 8 and 9 year deals locks the player in, prevents the player leaving on a Bosman. And if you believe the briefings that Chelsea are putting out, and I'm a little bit sceptical about them, but I'm a little bit sceptical about quite a few things about Chelsea, is that the players are willing to accept, the claim is that they're all on a basic salary of 60 grand a week. I'm going, well, that basic must involve them getting out of bed in the morning before turning up to training. You're getting a bonus, because based on my sums, their average salary is more than double that.
Yeah.
So players are clearly willing to commit to that. Clubs always do fear, and as we saw with Liverpool last season, Virgil van Dijk could have left on a Bosman, he stayed. Mo Salah could have left on a Bosman, he stayed. Trent Alexander-Arnold could have left on a Bosman, he left with 4 weeks to go for £10 million. So that allowed Real Madrid to allow him to play in the Club World Cup. So there are complications in this, and not every player is going to be coveted by dozens of clubs and can therefore take advantage and effectively auction their talents to the highest bidder, because for many players, they are seen as interchangeable, and they're seen as being replaced by somebody else who's willing to do the job for less money. So actually having a contract and the security of that contract, you and I, we both have jobs in the service sector. We're not denying that, but I don't go into a class thinking if I trip over, this could be this could be the end of my career. Every football player is one tackle away from the end of their career, and it's a short career. So getting security is a far greater concern for them.
Well, you see, as a comedian, if I trip over on stage, I'm doing my job because I'm getting laughs. Whereas you, as a teacher, that probably would be the end of your career. You'd be, here he comes, Mr. Trippier. Here he is.
Yes.
The mention of Salah and Van Dijk, Kieran, is interesting because it indicates that a lot of football fans, me included, don't fully understand a lot of football because there are many people who still think that the Bosman thing is compulsory. It's not like players can choose not to. They can choose to utilise it, but it's not. They reach a certain stage in their career. It's not compulsory for them to have to move on to another club at loads more money, is it?
Absolutely not. It is simply the fact that if your contract reaches its expiry date, your club cannot demand a compensation fee, or in the case of Bosman, and remember we've had Jean-Louis Dupont on the show twice now. Yeah. In the case of Bosman, what happened was that his club offered him, or effectively forced him, to take a lower value contract unless he was signed by somebody else for a transfer fee of their choosing, which is pretty reprehensible thing to do. So that's why we now have the Bosman ruling. It certainly has had an impact, in my view, on increasing wages overall at Premier League level in particular, not necessarily for the lower stages. But I was talking to somebody connected to a club earlier today who was giving me some of the wage levels for clubs in League Two and National League, and there's one club in the current League Two who's got a player on £12,000 a week, which is credible.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
It's football season, and you can now get almost anything you need for game day delivered with Uber Eats. What do we mean by almost? Well, you can't get a running back delivered, but you can get baby back ribs delivered. A strong defense? No. A strong deodorant? Yes. A 6-pack of abs? Nope. 6-pack of beer? Yes. Get almost anything for game day delivered with Uber Eats, official on-demand food delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Alcohol 21 plus and in select cities. Product availability varies by region. See app for details.
Well, you remember when we interviewed the owner of Farnham Town, he said there were players in other clubs at that level 7, 8 on £1,000-2,000 a week contracts, which is astonishing. Our last question, Kieran, comes from Nick Pooley. It mentions Leicester in passing. It also, I imagine, sent you to a lovely hour on a spreadsheet, because I'm sure you got a spreadsheet for this. But Nick Pooley said, Kieran has spoken before about how the Premier League don't want another Leicester City type situation where they win the league because interest in the Premier League apparently in that particular season was supposedly less with broadcasting figures, etc. However, do you have any judgment or barometer to determine which seasons and situations lead to the greatest attention on the Premier League? I was having a discussion with a friend in the pub the other. I hope it got heated. I like it when people say. Right. I've had a lot of discussions with friends in pubs the other day that end up with a table being turned over. And one of my favourite was about whether badgers caused tuberculosis in cows.
Blimey, that's a fierce one.
It is, and it's just happened to be a bloke from Gloucester in the pub who took exception to the fact that loads of blokes from Croydon thought they had more information on this particular subject than he might have done. But my friend and I were discussing. He was arguing that the Premier League is better when there's a successful Manchester United. However, I argued the opposite in that Chelsea, Man City, and the resurgence of Liverpool probably correlates with the greatest viewing figures and finances after inflation even. In your opinion, which situations of successful teams would be preferred most by the Premier League? And I'd be interested to hear, Kieran, just in general, whether you think there is a difference, or whether the Premier League is such an entrenched global brand that people will just carry on watching it regardless of whether it's United, City, Arsenal or Chelsea. And again, hats off to Sky Sports yesterday for actually claiming that Man City are now favourites to win the Premier League because they're only 6 points behind. There's nothing funnier than watching four pundits, including an increasingly bamboozled Roy Keane, being asked whether this was the moment. You can see Roy Keane wanted to say, "What are you talking about? There's 6 points behind them." Of course they're not.
Well, exactly where we were 40 hours ago.
Exactly, we haven't moved at all. But is there a difference, Kieran, just in general, what do you think?
Well, according to my research here, Sky claim that their best ever year was 2013-14, which was the year after Sir Alex Ferguson retired. And if you take a look at the top four, it was Manchester City, Liverpool, Arsenal and Chelsea, with Manchester United finishing 8th. But that was the first time ever that Manchester United had finished outside of the top four. It was David Moyes' first year. So Manchester United was still box office because it was in the transition. You did have a competitive Premier League that season. I think City only won it by 2 points. So I think there are a series of factors. I stand by what I say in that the year that Leicester won the Premier League was bad news from Sky's point of view, also due to the fact that Leicester actually wrapped up the Premier League quite early that season as well. So therefore, there wasn't that much to get jeopardy about. If you look at the first time that Manchester City won the Premier League and the Aguero moment, every single fan that I've ever spoken to was watching telly because you didn't know what was going to happen. And it was, again, pure theatre, which is what football can bring like no other activity. But there's no doubt Manchester United, and I would probably say now perhaps pipped by Liverpool, are the biggest generators of eyeballs, and that's what the broadcasters are seeking. But also jeopardy is absolutely essential. If Manchester United have wrapped up the Premier League, or Liverpool, when they used to do that on a regular basis in the early years of the Premier League, then it was noticeable that the viewing figures would drop. The broadcasters are very coy. Certainly those early years of the Premier League, the viewing figures far lower than they were today because not everybody had a satellite dish. And also people forget that in the first years of the Premier League, I think we had 40 games a season as opposed to the 200 that we have now. So there was lower overall viewing figures because there were far fewer matches. I remember the first ever Monday night match, and we're going, this is
weird.
This is strange. This is very weird. but I still watched it. I wasn't quite sure what to make of it. And we've been told by the critics this is the end of football as we know it. We're all going to stop going to watch matches live, and that was proven to be completely incorrect. So I would say that from Sky's point of view, they're claiming that was their best year. 2021, the COVID year, was actually the year when we had the highest ever viewing figures because the government was effectively using football as a sedative for the nation because in order to try to persuade people to not go out of their houses, all 380 games were broadcast, and we had football 7 days a week to again act as a means of trying to keep people glued to the telly to ensure greater compliance with the lockdown considerations. But that was, I think that was very much a set aside. The broadcasters are struggling to keep the viewing numbers up because there's two factors: A, price, and B, there is competition from illegal streaming. And it's taking I think a bigger slice of the market than people are prepared to admit.
I'd love to have seen the viewing figures in the Brighton Palace game yesterday. and how they compared. I think a lot of people go, do you know, I think there's curling on BBC Two.
Oh yeah,
which is great. And also, how lovely to hear Glenn Murray use the phrase "petering out," as you did. Our mutual friend Glenn Murray at the end of the first half using the phrase "petering out." Not quite the word I would have used, but well, I would, but there would have been an adjective involved in it. But thank you to everyone who's joined the Price of Football Club. If you'd like to join that club too, get every episode a day earlier than everyone else, ad-free listening, and invite to our monthly Q&A sessions, which is happening tonight or last night when you listen to this.
Now. Yes, we're now Twilight Zone, aren't we? We're not quite sure where we are time-wise.
Yeah, well, the last 6 weeks I've been exactly.
Yes.
So. You can go to our website, priceoffootball.com. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. And don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and find us on YouTube. And if you'd like to buy one of our books, or, drum roll, it's back, T-shirt, you can find all the details on that very same website, priceoffootball.com. We will be back on Thursday on the other side of a whole tranche of Premier League fixtures again. We'll be back on Thursday with our news pod. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, thank you for everybody for the different ways you support the show. Thank you to all of those Crystal Palace fans on social media who were checking after my welfare. I'm glad to say that we're clearly quite friends. Some of them putting it slightly more forcefully than others, but if you give it, you've got to be able to take it. That's always been my approach. But there's various ways you can support the show, and one of those is to give us a review. According to producer Guy, Kevin and I, he explains to us very patiently, and we just nod like Finley when I'm giving him a wonky chomp. We just nod and say, "Yeah, okay, yeah. We'll say it. We'll remember to say it, Guy. Remember to say it. Doesn't matter what you say." So you could even say you would rather have the show presented by Satan, Lord of the Underworld, and Peter Mandelson. And I'm not quite sure who's going to come out the more evil of the two.
I imagine that'd be Satan going, I'll get a day off on this one, don't I?
Exactly. Yes.
Finally, I'm not the least popular person in the room. Let's not follow down that. Producer Guy doesn't like it when we talk football, let alone politics. He must get Producer Guy, God love him, because literally, I think Finley's probably more emotionally intelligent than both of us, to be perfectly
yes.
And he's a very simple creature. So just give us wonky chomps. Pretty much that's pretty much what we're after. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The Price of Football. The Price of Football.
¿Hablas español?
Sprichst du Deutsch?
Kann du Norsk?
If you used Babbel, you would. Babbel's conversation-based techniques teaches you useful words and phrases to get you speaking quickly about the things you actually talk about in the real world, with lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts and voiced by real native speakers. Babbel is like having a private tutor in your pocket. Start speaking with Babbel today. Get up to 55% off your Babbel subscription right now at babbel.com/Spotify. Spelled BABBEL.com/Spotify. Rules and restrictions may apply.